you're on hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos TikTok, then you probably already know that it's often comorbid with POTS, MCAS, as well as autism, ADHD, stomach issues, or any digestive issues, often gastroparesis, etc. There's so many things that it's comorbid with. But what's really interesting is I just found this article that came out in January of 2024 on PubMed called Characterizing a New Clinical Phenotype, the Coexistence of Cerebral Venous Outflow and Connective Tissue Disorders. So the entire point of this article was to look at the overlap between cerebral venous outflow, which is related to idiopathic intracranial hypertension. And until recently, they thought that idiopathic intracranial hypertension was caused by being a woman in your 20s to 50s and being obese or significantly overweight, and meaning that for a long time, the treatment recommended was losing weight. In addition to doing a spinal tap and draining your spinal fluid, checking that way to see if the spinal fluid shoots out to check pressure, which in this article it shows for this group of people that doesn't always happen. But also, if it's left untreated, you'll go blind. So obviously, you don't want that to happen because once you go blind, you can't really undo the damage because it's crushed your optic nerve, even if you treat the underlying intracranial hypertension that's happening. But where this article comes in is that they found that there's now another phenotype, specifically of white women who are not significantly overweight, that present with connective tissue disorders that are also having this and all of the other comorbid conditions I just stated. So they found that a total of 86 patients were identified, and the majority of these patients carried a diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, 55%, and most were non-obese, meaning mean body mass index of 29.7 amongst the people in this study. 90% were white women, as well as having symptoms of a pressure headache, dizziness, tinnitus, and cognitive dysfunction. Aside from CVD and IIH, the most common associated conditions, in addition to those, were POTS, CFS leaks, dysautonomia, craniocervical instability, mast cell activation syndrome, tethered cord syndrome. I don't know much about that. I got to look more into that. Allergies to medication and surgical tape. I literally just had a Holter monitor for a week that caused me severe allergies that literally ripped my skin off when I took it off. And actually I was having to tape it with other tape because the allergic reaction was so severe that the sticker was not sticking because the skin was just melting off. Despite significantly lower opening pressures on lumbar puncture, headache severity and quality of life scores were reported with the same severity of classic IIH patients, suggesting an underlying hypersensitivity to intracranial pressures and cerebral venous congestion. This is my entire medical history, essentially, that I'm trying to address right now. And that I am this phenotype. This is crazy. But to be honest, I'm relieved because what this means is if I have at least one of these diagnoses formally and I print out this and I start printing out the other articles that show the connections between these, I'm going to start making a binder that has all this that I will take with me to specialists to show them the research, because getting at least one of these diagnoses will help me in getting all the others, because of just how heavily comorbid they are with one another. And the research is there. The evidence is there. And yes, there's doctors that think that this is all just a trend, and medical gaslighting is always going to exist, right? But if you have the data, you have the numbers, and you come to them and you show them this, and you also say the specific symptoms you're having and the impact that they're having on your life. I have such intense pressure headaches every day when I wake up that I cannot get out of bed, and it's preventing my ability to feed my pets, walk my pets, go to the grocery store, to feed myself, etc., etc. Stuff like that. They're going to be more likely to listen to you, and I get more of these checked off and get formal diagnoses for them. It's going to be easier to get the rest as well. Although I still feel a lot of apprehension about getting this diagnosis because a lot of people tend to think of it as just a severe headache and benign because it's not an actual tumor in your brain, even though it manifests similarly to one. It's not benign. It's affecting my day-to-day life significantly. And obviously it could make me go blind. That's a big deal. It is nice to know and feel validated that not only were these symptoms not in my head that I didn't even think to bring up, but they're also way more severe than I probably realized, and that my pain tolerance is just so high from the chronic everyday pain. On the phone with my ENT, she was like, how are you not doubling over? How do you drive yourself places? You were having a regular conversation with me. How are you functioning at the level you are? And I'm like, this is what my life's been like for almost a decade. I just learned to live with it. And if that's not like a summary of what living with chronic illness or chronic pain looks like, I don't know what is, because you just get used to it. However, seeing an article like this and seeing that they're really starting to research all of these comorbidities and how they're interacting with each other, like it's finally getting the research that it deserves, gives me a lot of hope, because I know that there are people in generations past that weren't able to get diagnosed with any of these things. And it's still hard to get diagnosed with them today, obviously, but the more research, the easier it's going to be to get diagnosed, and the more doctors are going to know about it and be able to hopefully discover treatments.